Good afternoon. It's Thursday, the 28th of May 2015, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host this afternoon, Brian Gerrish. I'll be joined by Skype link by Mike West from Bastion Radio, and we've got Nick Green behind the technical desk. Well, what's on the weather front? I just take the reports from our chat box, and I'm afraid to say that although we've got a bit of cloud and sunny spells in Rhondda, Manchester's looking a bit gloomy, and that's the report from most of the rest of UK, although somebody's quietly told us that, of course, there is a lot of sunshine in California and a drought. That's a very interesting subject, which perhaps UK Column ought to come on to. So if you're there in California and watching, hello from us. Thank you very much for joining. Well, where do we go today? We see a rapid escalation in the deliberate breakdown of the British state. We see attacks on our constitution. We see attacks on common law. And increasingly, we are seeing the state attacking anybody who dares to stand up and point a finger as to what's been happening. And this appears to be the case with the recent takedown of Bastion Radio. So I'm going to pass across to Mike. Tell us what's been happening to you.
Hi Brian, how are you doing? I've not got your screens here, so I won't be able to preview anything that you're putting up on the screen at the moment for some reason. But anyway, good afternoon. Yes, fun and games. It's our third time the website itself's been attacked. This time, just taken down totally. So it's our third move in just about the same amount of period of time in months, as it were. Whilst you were on Sunday with us as well, you saw that our YouTube channel was being attacked twice. The reason why we know it's attacked is because attacking the ports this end. I have a software network analyzer called Wireshark, which highlights when we're under attack, and we was under significant attack on Sunday. Just as you come on and started to discuss some of the comments. But a lot of people saying maybe it's because we discussed the so-called or presumed neutron bomb attack in Yemen. But I'm sceptical to that. We get these random attacks quite on a regular basis, but this one was really significant. They've not only managed to take the Bastion website down, but whoever's done it has targeted my business website as well.
Right. Isn't it interesting that we've now got a very large number, thousands of people who are trying to get information out. They're doing it very simply with podcasts. They're putting up small video clips. But obviously the truth, I'm going to say the truth that's coming out in these alternative media forms is so scary to the establishment that they are now in the business of taking direct action. Interesting point for you. What were we talking about that caused the problem? I'm going to say I would guess that it's been Bastion Radio's exposure of Capita, which is beginning to make these people very, very nervous. What would you agree with that? We've sustained significant attacks since we've started looking into them. So much so last week, I had my video editing machine. The software that I use for my editing and the live broadcast software were totally messed up. I had to reinstall that machine to get things working. Hence, there's a delay on the third part of the Capita documentary that we're doing at the moment. So that's been put back. Hopefully by Friday, that should be out tomorrow. But that's caused delays. We're just seeing regular attacks, no matter what security I do this end. It's penetrated to the point now that when I'm not using machines, I have to turn them off, because even with all the protection on my router and on the individual PCs that I use, I have to turn them off now, just to prevent any further attacks. Yeah. That's getting a bit silly at the moment. And the situation we're at with Bastion Radio at the moment is that we made a decision on Monday to stop until we have a rethink and see where we go from here. Obviously it costs money to set up different servers every time. I've paid out a year in advance, because you have to with good hosting deals.
3 times in 3 months, and it's just getting a bit silly now. Keep having to pay out and then find ourselves having to move on again in a month's time.
Well, Mike, we of course are very happy to lend a helping hand if we can. Perhaps we should also remind viewers that Chris Spivey started to come under attack once he began to expose what was really happening around Lee Rigby. Very nasty stuff going on there for Chris Spivey, and of course the usual tactic: if the state can't bully you into silence, well, what's the next thing to do? Come after your children. And that's a theme that we're going to be returning to in the news today. Well, Mike, I know you're tight for time. Please stay with us as long as you can.
Okay.
That will be very nice. I thought we'd just lead on through by reminding ourselves of this gentleman here, Mr. David Miliband. And he's been creeping back into the press. Remember that this man threw his toys out the pram when he didn't win the Labour leadership. So Ed got it. So David threw all his teddy bears out the pram, and he disappeared off to New York to start working with what many would regard as a dubious international charity, some backing from George Soros. So usual thing, I can't play in UK politics, I'm going to run away to another country. But isn't it interesting that British media started to bring him back into the frame? Well, we thought we'd remind ourselves a bit about this man. So whilst Miliband was spouting about Britain in the Telegraph, of course it was the Daily Mail that exposed his hypocrisy and lies. David Miliband exposed as being behind the cover-up of Britain's secret involvement in torture of terror suspects. And in the article, they really went for it because they said he gave an interview to the New Statesman magazine in 2009. I abhor anything that constitutes torture, waterboarding. It's perfectly clear to me it's torture. I've never supported extraordinary rendition to torture, always said that Guantanamo Bay should be closed. There's no clash of ideals and pragmatism there. And then a year after his abhorred torture interview, he was exposed as being behind a cover-up of one of the most shameful episodes in New Labour's rule, Britain's secret involvement in the torture of terror suspects overseas. Well, they've forgot about lies over weapons of mass destruction there, but at least they're exposing this man. And what did he do? Well, 3 times he went to obtain public interest immunity certificates, which stop official documents being released. And this obviously was to conceal MI5's dirty little secrets. So we've got a state that can spend huge amounts of money covering up the fact that the British government and British secret services were involved in the torture of individuals, but they've got enough power and clout and hardware to come shutting down the likes of your site, Mike. Any thoughts on the Miliband brothers?
Well, yeah, I think it said it all, really, didn't it? At the time of they were electing the leader for the Labour Party, 2 brothers against each other, bit of a Cain and Abel situation, if you want to get biblical about it. You know, one, they seem to stab each other in the back. Now, if they're prepared to do that within their own family, what are they prepared to do with us? And then you've got the likes of Tony Blair, who I understand at this moment in time is hopefully standing down as Middle East peace envoy. Sorry, whilst I laugh while and try and get them that sentence together. He's standing down in June. I just wonder if there's something bigger playing out here, Brian. Is it catching up with Tony Blair now? Is he being forced to stand down? And will we eventually see? There's many countries after him, don't forget. He's on many wanted lists for breaking not only human rights crimes as well, but war crimes. I'm just wondering now if these past is starting to catch up with him.
Well, I would hope so. It's difficult to tell, isn't it? This cabal of individuals, they sometimes are promoting their own, other times they seem to creep off into the sidelines. But yeah, I could agree that it may well be getting too hot for Tony Blair, that there's a real possibility that either he gets taken to a proper court or somebody decides to take the law into their own hands. But what we can say is that if we look at New Labour, of course, New Labour was the utter betrayal of old Labour. This was the Marxist ideology coming in. And let's remember that the Miliband brothers came straight out of a Marxist household with Ralph Miliband. And together with Prescott, Gordon Brown helped into power by the Scottish communists. This is the real Marxist element trying to take control of British politics. So they may be dispersed overseas at the moment, but I think these are very, very dangerous individuals. Meanwhile, at home, we've had more trouble on the streets. This is Douglas Carswell here coming under attack by a mob in London. And of course, what were they shouting? Well, he's racist scum, he's a UKIP racist. Absolutely fascinating that we have this small violent group with lots of banners, socialist workers being some of them, get the Tories out. But the state surveillance system apparently had no idea these violent individuals were going to come onto the streets. Luckily, Mr. Carswell said, although he was a bit shaken, he was fine. And I think we've got to give him credit for his statement here. He says, as an MP, I will always use public transport, and I don't want to live in a society where the politicos don't. Well, that's pretty brave words, and we're going to say to him, well done for that, because, of course, if the people we supposedly elect can't move around in public, we're in a pitiful state. But UK Column would like to say, who are these violent protesters? And more importantly, who funded them? This is the key to it. Who's providing money for these groups where they can suddenly appear with very posh banners? And the UK Column is going to continue to warn of subversive state-incited protest. And as we've reported over the last couple of days, of course, the police themselves have been dropping hints that their intelligence staff have been put on unlimited overtime, and they've had their summer leave stopped because the government expects trouble. My thought is that this is the government going to agitate trouble because it then gives David Cameron an easy platform to bring his state clampdown on. Do you think I'm being pessimistic here, Mike? What's your take?
No, not at all. You know, we've got sort of flavours here from the Thatcher years coming back, haven't we? Here we are, we've got police being told that there's cuts left, right and centre. They're cutting the force in their thousands. But there's unlimited overtime for these situations where the protests are starting to take off now. This thing with Douglas Carswell and UKIP, and I think most of the problems within the Labour Party and UKIP are being caused intentionally. The media is playing to it because all the time they're doing that, they're taking the focus away from the damage the Tories are doing behind the scenes. And let's face it, I think after next month, once George Osborne's made his announcements on this budget that he's going to bring in, we're really going to see what the Tories are all about. So, yeah, I see all this as incitement. I think they want to stir up the trouble because hopefully by June, as the Tory, the way the Tories will be thinking is that there'll be so much going on in the media, as it were, then it might take a lot of the focus away from the Tory plans that they want to bring in. And it's not just austerity I'm talking about. I'm talking about the all the plans that they've got for us domestic terrorists, and the further restrictions to civil liberties, which the Tories are eager to bring in as well, like taking away your human rights.
Yeah. Well, we'll move on a little bit into that subject, starting with this. A number of people have been flagging up that there are reports of a special event this year around Magna Carta. And here's a fascinating Telegraph article that says treason. Magna Carta barons face trial 800 years on. And what is all this about? Well, we decided we'd take a little delve into it. We know it's very important. We're going to do more work on it. But just look at that headline. Magna Carta barons, treason. This is a very, very interesting nudge and spin propaganda on the public mind. This is some of the text. They have long been credited with helping to lay the foundations of the British state as we know it today, based on the rule of law, the right to a fair trial and the protection of private property. But this summer, the barons and bishops who forced King John to agree to the Magna Carta are to be tried for treason. 800 years after the historic signing of the document at Runnymede, Berkshire, June the 15th, 2015, senior lawyers, including the President of the UK Supreme Court, will sit in judgment on the barons and bishops who gathered by the River Thames after refusing to surrender London to King John to decide whether they acted lawfully or were in fact guilty of treasonable behaviour. So we've got many of those who are assisting the treasonous breakdown of our constitution and justice system are now going to sit in judgment of those that gave us freedom and justice. This seems to be, to me, just to be a fantastic propaganda exercise where you are spinning the truth so that black has become white and white's become black. We're going to try the barons who created the Magna Carta. We're going to try them for treason. So where's this lot come from? Well, we need to just have a look at this. This is from the Magna Carta Trust. You can go on the website, the internet, and have a look at this for yourself. A lot of very good information. Encourage you to look at the facts. And of course, here we are already on this page featuring Lord Neuberger. So he's now become very big on the importance of the Magna Carta. But let's remember, we've now got judges who are going to judge those who created essentially our constitution and law. So where's all this come from? We thought a UK column wiring diagram would assist it. Let's have a look. We've got a docudrama, which we say is going to attack and trivialise and undermine our constitution. But how does it describe itself? Celebrating 800 years of democracy. We'll be coming on to democracy when we talk about children. So according to the website, all of this goes back to October 1956, when representatives from the English-speaking Union, the Pilgrims of Great Britain, the Royal Empire Society, the Victoria League, Overseas League, National Trust, and High Commissioners planned a Magna Carta Trust. Well, that gets set up, and then there's government Magna Carta stakeholders, which includes HM Treasury. Well, why do you need the Treasury? Because you need lots of money, £1 million, in order to kick off your propaganda. And what better person than to provide the money from a very, very tight Conservative budget? We can't feed people, but here was £1 million out of George Osborne's purse to set up the Magna Carta Trust. And who do we need to be a key patron? Well, we need the Queen to come in there. So there we are, Magna Carta Trust, and the Queen is our patron. And then we set up a Magna Carta 800th committee, and the great and the good are selected for that. So we've got Sir Robert Worcester, chairman of the Magna Carta Committee. And you need to go and have a look at this committee yourself. You'll understand why. Here we are. There are so many names on this committee, it cannot possibly be real. There are too many people there to have any proper decision-making process. So I'm going to guess, with a slight bit of UK column cynicism, that amongst all those names, it's only been driven by a few. And then if we hop across, we've got members of the 800th Advisory Board. And surprise, surprise, we've got a similar thing then. A mass of names. There's the whole of the elite, the great and good. And I just thought I'd pull out the Director General of the BBC, Mark Thompson. So there we are. This is the organisation which is going to put the barons on trial for treason. We couldn't find any money to put our politicians on trial for treason, but seems to me we've got the BBC backing an attempt to twist history and, as I've said, make black white. Did you know anything about this, Mike? This could be new to you.
There's a few oxymorons in there as well, isn't there? You know, Magna Carta Trust. And then at the same time, you've got the patron, the Queen, which I think is the biggest traitor in this country ever, to allow a mediatisation status that she's in at this very moment, and the BBC in there as well, not to be trusted. It's just another distraction, Brian. Let's face it. I mean, if they're going to be trying people from all those years ago, I mean, what right of reply have these people got? None at all. So it sounds like it's, you know, just any old justice case that you could witness today. It's all done and set in stone before any case is even heard in a courtroom. I presume this is the same thing. It's another way, like you say, it's shaping people to say, oh, we need change, we need this. Everything's change, and this is just one of the processes of it, I'm afraid.
Well, you've raised a particularly good point there, Mike, because of course the people who were involved can't defend themselves in this kangaroo court.
Exactly, yeah.
Isn't it interesting that we've got the British state can run a trial about events 800 years ago. They can run trials about child abuse events 70 years ago. What we can't do is run trials about current child abuse cases.
Well, Jimmy Savile. Well, what's happening? He's dead, but he's quite recent. What's happened with this Jimmy Savile inquiry? Where's the BBC in all this? They put themselves on other projects like this, the Magna Carta thing, and commission documentaries to look into survivors of child abuse. But at the same time, what's happened to the BBC inquiry about the Savile inquiry? That's huge. It's massive. What, we don't hear nothing about that?
Well, of course not. The idea is to drag it out as long as possible, keep it in the long grass, and then people slowly forget about it. But we won't be forgetting. Let's come back to the barons. This is what the Telegraph had to say. It says July's mock trial is being staged to determine whether the barons and bishops behind the document were justified in law in breaching their promise to surrender London to King John and then forcing him to sign the document limiting his powers. Tremendous spin going on here, breaching their promise, forcing him to sign the document limiting his powers. And then this is where I found some really interesting stuff. Although it was quickly annulled by Pope Innocent III on the grounds it was illegal and had been signed by King John under duress. So we described the barons as breaching their promise. They forced the king, that's sort of a threat. And here comes the good Pope, because he quickly annulled it on the grounds it was illegal and the king had signed it under duress. Interestingly enough, duress is one of the core common law defences, but now apparently this is all to do with Pope Innocent III. We think this is a misleading inference that the Pope had the right to make a judgment on the Magna Carta. Well, who was this man? Have a look for yourselves. But he was pretty big on heresy. I think that means inquisition and torturing people. And he was also pretty good at running the Crusades in the Middle East, which, of course, also murdered and killed hundreds of thousands of people. So interesting to see him promoted by the Telegraph. I'll give you a right to reply on that little section, Mike.
Sorry, Brian. That's something I've not really looked into, and I'll be very interested to look into.
No, fair enough. I don't want to catch you on the hoof.
Sorry.
I do know that there are many people watching the emerging power of the Vatican. That is how I'm going to put it. And of course, the Vatican has a very powerful hand at the moment in what's taking place in the Middle East. Very little of it appears in the paper, but immense power from the Vatican. Let's remember the Vatican Bank. It's interesting that the Telegraph's promoting it. So we just finish off the section here. Back to that article, if you can, Nick. Can we bring that up on screen? Thank you. And the trial will be judged by Lord Neuberger, the President of the UK Supreme Court, Dame Eliza, Chief Justice of New Zealand, and the Honourable Stephen Breyer, Associate Justice of the US Supreme Court. Well, isn't it interesting that we've got somebody there from New Zealand? Because, of course, we've had the New Zealand judge Goddard's being brought in to head up the child abuse inquiry that isn't happening. We decided to put Melanie Shaw on screen there because a massive effort by British judiciary, overseas judiciary, to try somebody from 800 years ago, but they don't seem to be able to get to grips with the paedophiles who were operating at a children's home in Nottingham. So yesterday we flagged up the opaque system by which Britain's judges are appointed. So this was the courts and tribunals section saying that they were now appointed by a committee. It was independent, but not to worry because the Lord Chancellor has a veto. Well, not really a veto, although it is a veto. Don't worry, it's independent. And if you want to see how independent it is, have a look at the commission. But of course, it didn't actually say how the commission members were appointed. And at the moment, the Judicial Appointments Commission doesn't want to seem to reply to the UK column. Well, if justice is in a mess, don't worry, because of course our monarch is going to look after us, and she's been very busy reopening Parliament for the 62nd time. So here was a glorious picture in the Mail. Prince Philip looking full of concern for his fellow men. Apparently the Queen was a bit hot with all the velvet and a £2.5 crown. I think that crown should have been weighed in kilos, actually. I think the paper made a bit of a mistake there, but not to worry. But she's 90 or whatever it is, so probably this was hard work. Let's have a look at what she said. My government will legislate in the interests of everyone in the country. I think there's a nice bit of double speaking there, because are they legislating in the real interests of everybody in the country, or does it mean they're going to legislate to get into the interests of everyone in the country? I think the latter. But this is the key bit. It will adopt a one nation approach, helping working people get on, supporting aspiration, giving new opportunities to the most disadvantaged, and bringing together different parts of the country. This is all lovey-dovey language out of Cameron. What did he have to say? Sorry, this is a bit small, but he said he will drive through a raft of controversial new laws within months as he seeks to capitalise on his political honeymoon. The Prime Minister told MPs he will not waste a single moment with getting on with the task of reshaping Britain. To which we say, well, firstly, what is the nation that these people talk about? David Cameron's continually talking about our nation. I get the nasty little feeling that they're talking about a completely different nation to us. Is this the privileged and the wealthy, or is there something darker at hand? Mike, I'll just see what you say about that.
Yeah, just a word to Nick. I think he may have the camera turned off your end for the feedback here on Skype. I'm not seeing any of the screens, but okay. Yeah, just quickly, Brian. Well, it just seems to me that the Queen's roles and David Cameron's roles have flipped, isn't it? Here we have the second Tory speech, as I call it, which has been given by the Queen. She seems to be more of a spokeswoman for the Conservative Party now, and like David Cameron says, you know, it's his nation now, by the sound of it. And he's sounding more like a dictator every day. Again, for people that doubt that and don't think that's going to be the case, I just wait and see until these new bits of legislation he wants to hurry through the door, along with Theresa May. People might be, if they put the tick in the box for the Conservatives at this last election, they might be regretting that sooner than they think. Yeah, so I think the whole thing's flipped, to be honest, Brian. The Queen, she's nothing more than a spokesman now for the government. And it seems to me the person that's really running this nation is David Cameron.
Well, I'm going to just say probably David Cameron, of course, with permission of his very wealthy international banking backers, because, of course, it is the people who control the money who've got the real power.
Yeah, I did mean to say David Cameron PLC, which encompasses
Capita.
Well, everything, yeah. He's got his fingers in all pies, and so has his extended family, as we know.
Yeah. Well, plenty of money for the dripping elite in and around Parliament. Not so much money for Britain's armed forces, but we couldn't resist this little article from the Plymouth Herald. It says that Plymouth battleship is going to take over as the Royal Navy flagship next week. I always like the term battleship because in the public mind, big, powerful ships. Well, what are they talking about? Well, basically, they're talking about HMS Ocean, which is simply a helicopter carrier, command and control ship. But we've got the nuclear submarine fleet badly affected by defects and major problems with spares, etc. We've got the same sorts of problems going on in the Trident nuclear submarines. But we've got local media hype that's promoting a helicopter carrier as a battleship. And this bit made me smile because it says, excuse me, Ocean is also paving the way for aircraft carrier Queen Elizabeth, which will assume the role of the Royal Navy's flagship when she enters service. So this is jammed tomorrow because, of course, we don't have this magical carrier in service. And even if we did, there are no aircraft to go on it. So this is very poor reporting at the best of times, excuse me. But it's the reality of the fact that, of course, treason is being committed as the government fails to defend the nation properly. Well, this gives me a nice introduction to a filmed interview that we will be pushing out very shortly, Servant of the Country, Betrayed by the State. Here's a little introduction, and then I'll talk to you.
Myself. I have rights. I believe in my rights, defended my country on an ideology of truth and justice, and I believe in it strongly. And now knowing that it's totally false and corrupt, I won't stand for that. I won't stand to be bullied either.
Well, that interview, that videoed interview, will be coming out very, very soon. We think it's extremely powerful, and what a classic case. So we've got somebody yet again who has served their country. I could say Queen and country. We'll leave the Queen out for the moment. Served their country, and the British state now attacking them with a vehemence that is nearly beyond belief, except this gentleman tells the truth. So stay with us, stay looking out for that. It will be out in the next couple of days, but we think a very, very powerful interview, really getting to the heart of the utter corruption that is now running Britain. The theme around children, and of course, if you're in the system, social worker, it doesn't matter what you do because all you're going to get is a quick slap on the wrist. Have a look at community care here. So a social worker who recorded false supervision records and forged a supervisee's signature simply gets a slap on the wrist, and they're just going to have a look at her practice for 12 months. Now, of course, many people have been in court and seen utter lies, perjury, fraudulent reports being put in by social workers. We know this is not all of them, but we know this is a major problem. And of course, the courts absolutely defend those fraudulent reports, the perjury, the lies. And what do? They penalise the parents. Well, many people say, yes, but why would they want to do that? Well, there is only one answer: because the British state is lying and covering up for massive child abuse. And it took this brave MP, John Mann, to stand up in Parliament recently and give a short talk. You can find it on YouTube. Have a look. It's only got 73 views on it, but I encourage you to look at it. And in his speech to the House, he says the scandal of historic child abuse in this country is going to be one of the defining issues in the next 5 years. To which I say, well, it would be, Mr. Mann, if the government doesn't succeed in covering it up. But let's have a look at his audience here, because the usual thing was going on. Basically, a virtually empty Parliament where you could just see the yawns on their faces on the subject of child abuse. So this is the heart of Britain. We've seen the Queen in all her ermine and gold and the carriages and the pomp and ceremony on the streets of London for consumption by the British public and the public overseas, of course, whilst the reality is we're living in a country with an utterly depraved, rotten core of politicians that unfortunately we have all allowed to be elected. And what do they look like? Well, thanks to the Mail here talking about the Queen opening Parliament. Here he is. This is, of course, David Cameron in his sharp suit, upstanding young man, been to the right schools. Trust him, David Cameron. Well, what's the reality? Well, of course, David Cameron was the man who wanted to close down any talk of Westminster child sex abuse rings. Luckily, MP Simon Danczuk bowled him out on this, and here's the report in The Independent. And then who's he got next to him? Well, good old Harriet Harman. And let's remember that this is the lady linked to a paedophile group that, amongst other things, wanted to lower the age of consent to allow sex with children and to allow people to take pornographic pictures of children. So it's not difficult, Mike, is it, to work out what's going wrong with Britain at the moment?
No, not at all. Going back to the social workers there, and that they tend to use, in a lot of cases that we see, we get this word again, qualified experts. They're mentioned in the press a lot, but no names are mentioned. We get similar things going on in so-called family courts, which are just star chambers, where these social workers are spending absolute thousands of pounds on these unqualified experts. I think there was a big expose either in the Telegraph or the Mail not so long ago about the amount of these experts that are being used in these cases. As for social workers, and you're saying, I'm sure there's some good ones. I'm getting a bit tired of that phrase now, Brian, to be honest with you. I hear the same about the police. I hear the same, about social workers and people working in these private companies that are abusing the system, as it were. I don't think there are any good ones, to be honest, because you're not that very good if you're not willing to band together and expose what is criminal, in my mind. So I don't cover for these people anymore. They may be good, they may be good-hearted people, and they may be very nice socially. But if you're doing a job and you're covering this up, as far as I'm concerned, you're just as bad. Now, when it comes to child abuse and why we don't see such an uproar about it, I'm wondering where this all is with the amount of child abuse cases that have come out over the last year, certainly 2 years. To be quite honest, the apathy is sickening because people make more of a scene about rainbow flags, Britain's Got Talent, and the crap that's on our televisions than rather think about not just the children that have been abused, but their children themselves. We want to prevent this in the future. We want our children to have good education and not have to worry about paedophile teachers or people in the social care system abusing children. So, yeah, I'm getting to a point where I won't tolerate any excuses now, like, oh, there must be good ones, because we don't see them. Where are these good ones? What are they doing?
I share your passion there, Mike. I'll just add in where we do see some of these people speaking out, of course, they're being threatened. What can the public do? Well, the public needs to come in and to support people who are doing the right thing. And I believe there's got to be a bit of give and take over this, because we see MPs like Mr. Danczuk, John Mann. You could look back over some of the things they've done and you say, well, you could have done better, but they are it seems starting to do the right thing now would be good to get behind them. But take your point. Well, I couldn't resist bringing this man in, because out of all the politicians, I personally think Nick Clegg is one of the most dangerous, because, of course, never really elected to any position of power, but then given immense power in the Privy Council. You don't really see him. He's the grey man. He's hiding in the background. The Mail here reporting that he struggled to deflect torture questions on LBC when he was interviewed. This is all to do with the rendition story, which I've covered. But let's remember that this politician as well, another one, they're all working to cover up, amongst other stories, the story of the abuse of children in Hampstead. The British establishment is terrified of this story because it starts to impact on everything: Dolphin Square, Elm House, Westminster, the great and the good, even into the judiciary. This is the story that's terrifying the British government. And you know, what can we say about Nick Clegg? Well, politically groomed in matters to do with the EU by Leon Britton. But of course, Nick Clegg was also the man that gently swept abuse of women in the Lib Dems. That all disappeared under the carpet. And we're also being told by very, very good sources that, of course, the Lib Dems were only too happy to join in the Labour Conservative pre-election secret deal to keep child abuse out of the election campaign. So thank you very much for those people connected to the main parties who were kind enough to give us that information. We've now had it corroborated from other people, so we can announce to the British public today it is absolutely certain there was a dirty backdoor deal, principally done by the Conservatives and Labour, so that they would not talk about child abuse in the election. Utter deceit on the public. And this is the other thing that I think makes this case so powerful. If we just pop that one back, Nick, briefly, I've just added the statement there that, of course, this is the case where police officers are still being threatened by other police officers to keep their snouts out of the Hampstead case. Very, very serious stuff. And we'll end with just a reminder. We call them the Dirty Dozen, who were only too happy to get into West London Synagogue to celebrate the life of Leon Britton. But these people, no progress on child abuse. And I can tell our viewers and listeners today that Melanie Shaw is back in the brutal punishment regime within profit-making Sodexo Prison Peterborough. She's been back in solitary confinement. And in one of the letters that's now been received, we know that she's having an utterly brutal time. As an ex-serviceman myself, and I share Stuart, who we've done the interview with, he's saying, well, basically he served his country thinking he was doing the right thing. You discover you were now working for a criminal, perverted elite. Your ex-forces, it does make you pretty cynical, doesn't it?
Definitely. And if that guy's coming out, I'll stand behind him, and we've got to stand behind him as well. I mean, as for the monarchy at this moment, it's something that we've all had to bow down to while she was in the forces. Once you see through what it's all about, respect and loyalty disappears. Mine's just totally gone. I couldn't be more disgusted with our monarchy at this very moment. But yeah, Nick Clegg, you know, he's an apprentice of some really interesting people. You don't take much research on that, and it's quite right. I've listened to him on LBC, and every time CSA comes up, he's ducking and diving the answers, and you know, it's all clear for us to see there. And by you confirming that the election promised between Labour and Conservatives not to discuss child sex abuse, well, in my mind, it's a denial and defensive move, and to me, it's criminal. It's covering up state-sponsored child sex abuse. There's masses of cases across the country involving masses of people. We want to see some action now. We don't want it covered up. We want it out in the light. But unfortunately, most of the public are more concerned about different colour flags and the crap on their television to be concerned. And we saw that at the last vote at the elections, Brian, unfortunately.
Yep. Well said, Mike, and you've very nicely just given an introduction. The final subject, which I'll do very quickly today, but we're going to be looking into this more. Political, somebody somewhere likes us because we've been getting a steady stream of interesting information from within political parties. We've been given this interesting survey. This absolutely tells us what the real agenda for our political parties is. Never mind jobs and economy and looking after old people. Have a look at this little lot coming in. This is the Conservatives. They think they've got a lot more to do to champion rights for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender people. They want to issue pardons to men convicted of sodomy and gross indecency. Well, that would solve a lot of the abuse cases. They want to extend the laws to cover hate crimes, including transgender. They want to outlaw groups that foment hate. They've got plans for extremism disruptive orders. They're going to support homosexualisation of sex education. They've got a Stonewall advisor to the Education Secretary. Abortion, they would support lowering the 42-week abortion limited. And Cameron is for animal-human hybrid embryos. British values are now pink laws to support the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual agenda. And all of this is going to be enforced at law. So I'm just giving people a taster today. This is just what the Conservatives have got in line for this country. Tomorrow I'll take the banner off some of those other ones and we'll have a look at what the other parties are talking about. So this is the real state of Cameron's perverted government, a creeping dictatorship, which encompasses a massive attack on Britain's normal heterosexual families. No doubt I will have upset a few people, but really it's time for the truth to come out, and we're going to stick with the truth and the facts. Mike, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you everybody else that's tuned in today, and as always a big thank you to our overseas viewers, especially those of you in Taiwan. We'll be back same time tomorrow with Northern Exposure with David Scott. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.